Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. Just a reminder, we do have interpretation services available in Arabic.
مساء الخير، نشكركم على حضوركم معنا اليوم مرة ثانية، ونحب ننوه بأن هذا الاجتماع مزود بالترجمة الفورية باللغة العربية. وإذا كنتم عم تشاهدونا من التليفون رجاء الضغط على النقاط الثلاثة بأسفل الشاشة كرمال تختار اللغة المناسبة، وهي طبعا اللغة العربية في هالحالة. أو إذا كنتم عم تحضروا من الكمبيوتر رجاء الضغط على إشارة الكرة الأرضية واختيار اللغة المناسبة اللغة العربية. شكرا مرة ثانية لحضوركم معنا.
All right, thank you, Suad, and good evening, advisory team. We appreciate you joining us tonight. We know thunderstorms are in the area, so hopefully we don't lose each other, but feel free to try to join back on if you log off, if you fall off, or type in the chat if you can't hear anybody, if our internet connection is unstable. This meeting is being broadcast live, to let you know, and it's also being recorded and will be posted on our website. Please feel free to use the raise hand feature for questions at the end, but we are going to try and go through our full presentation before we take questions and comments from the advisory team. As a reminder, the public are welcome to view this meeting, but they cannot submit questions to us or comments, but they are welcome to view and certainly follow up with us after through our high school project email. We'll go ahead and get started. For those of you who were able to join the community meeting last night, this is pretty much the same presentation, but we did want to, of course, go through it with you all a little bit more in detail and have some open dialogue, specifically mostly about the aquatic facility, but then any other things, any other design elements you all want to talk about tonight. So welcome. My name, again, is Erica Gulick. I'm the Director of Capital Programs Planning and Design with Alexandria City Public Schools. With us tonight, we have several members of the design team from Perkins Eastman, ACPS's team, as well as the City of Alexandria staff to answer questions. So again, we want to go over the campus design, and then we'll have discussion updates. You're fine. And then, so as a reminder, this is our current layout of the full facility. This is oriented pretty much with northeast southwest, but we have West Braddock Road along the bottom of the screen, still using that as our access for the school site. Flipping where the building and the fields are, so you can see the building now on the right side of the site and the fields on the left. We could keep going. And I would also ask if you could just, for the public, this is in speaker view, so they see kind of whoever's mic is on. So if you're able to keep yourself muted, and then at the end, we'll go around and make sure everybody has a chance to speak. We wanted to give you all an update on the June survey. If you recall, we did an online survey. We did some polls in community meetings, but we also did an online survey mostly on the aesthetic of the new building and the design and getting people's reactions. These were the participants. We had over 400 responses, which is pretty good turnout, especially in the end of a crazy school year. So we were happy about that, most of them being residents. So thank you for getting that out to your communities and making sure that everyone participated. The questions specifically we asked in that survey were trying to get people's reactions to the building design itself. So first, how do you feel about the building design? You can see there we had 77% who liked it, 14% who were neutral, and less than 10% who didn't like it. How well do you think the new Mini Howard building complements the King Street campus? Again, this is really important to us from the school division perspective, because we want to make sure one of our high school campuses is not outshining the other. The two are intended to be connected and students will attend classes in both facilities. So we wanted to make sure that the new Mini Howard building still complemented the King Street campus, which is fairly new as well. We had 58% say they felt it complemented it very well, and 23 said well. So that's a pretty good majority of people thinking we at least did a good job on that end, but still had 11% who were neutral and less than 10% who said we did not meet that well. And then lastly, because we've heard this on multiple projects actually, but also specifically from you all and the community, but trying to really find a balance between the kind of traditional brick looking building that we find in Alexandria and more contemporary design aesthetics. And again, had a fairly positive response on that, a little bit more on the neutral side related to that, but we know it's a little bit of a complex question. So overall, we were pretty pleased with these survey results, but did want to bring them back to you all as you all represent your communities, and just wanted to make sure this was kind of reflective of what your communities may have communicated to you. Go to the next slide. I am now going to turn it over to Sean O'Donnell with Perkins Eastman to walk us through the design and then talk a little bit more in detail about some of the different elements in the building.
Great. Thanks, Ms. Gulick. So first, let me just begin by saying, how excited we are to be working on this project with you and to be back, sharing some of the work as it continues to develop. We think this is going to be a really exciting, great place to learn, and also a great place for the community to come together and use all of the resources, for the families of ACPS, but also the community at large as well. So what I'm going to do is show you some drawings that build upon everything that we've been doing to date. We're in a phase of work called design development. And what that means is, all the decisions that have been made through the prior two phases, concept design and schematic design, have set the stage for, many of the major moves and relationships, that you'll see in the drawings now. And really what design development is about is a process of elaboration and refinement on many of those decisions that have been made in prior phases. So what I'll do is I will talk through many of the things that have changed, from what you might have seen before and some of the refinements that are underway. But first, let me just start by saying, for those that might be joining us for the first time, just a sort of general starting point for the site plan that you're looking at here right now. The first piece to note is that the existing building sits, plus or minus where the multi-purpose field is shown in this drawing. So, and the new building sits, approximately on the fields, if you're familiar with the existing site. And why we're doing that is it allows us to keep that existing building operational while we build the new building. So we have minimal impact on, the instruction, on, the facilities, and perhaps even on some of the existing parking as well, as we think about, again, keeping disruption to the existing facilities and operations minimized as we build the new building. So once the new building is done, though, we'll demolish the existing building, and then we'll build out basically the left side of the site to accommodate all of the new outdoor spaces that you see in this drawing. So let me just walk through the basic lay of the land here on the site plan. So starting from the left or the west side of the campus, this is the highest point, by the way. There's a lot of topography on the site, as many folks know, about 60 feet of elevation change from left to right. So we're starting at sort of the high point here. And you can see that we have a practice field, we have a tennis and pickleball courts here. This is actually a change from the prior site plan that you might have seen. We moved the tennis and pickleball portion of the complex to the south, just to both enhance the quality of the practice field, but then also, make that facility even more convenient to the community that's using it. You can see the walking track and that circumnavigates the outdoor space, and then of course, the multi-purpose field is quite prominent here. On this western portion of the site as well, you'll see that there is a bus drop-off following that sort of blue line coming off of West Braddock in the center of the plan on the south side. And that is situated to allow us to, in many ways, control the arrival and the vehicular traffic during arrival and departure during the school day, so that we have a clear place for the buses to congregate, for students to safely arrive and get onto the buses, and then enter the building. And I'll show you how that works in a moment. Just as a counterpoint, the blue loop that goes through the parking on the east side is the car drop-off. So again, we have a separation of cars and buses safely arriving onto the campus, well configured to allow for that. As we move from west to east again, at that bus drop-off, you can see some red lines, that start to approach the building. There's a variety of outdoor spaces, that arrive from the bus loop, and a student arriving from a bus will get off the bus and walk into this west-facing courtyard, that the building creates, to an entrance that actually arrives at the second floor. And I'll show you the floor plans in a moment, because again, we've got a lot of topography, and the building is negotiating that and taking advantage of that. So yeah, exactly where the cursor is shown right here. So we have a really beautiful new courtyard and a sort of secondary front door that'll celebrate their arrival into the campus. You can also see the basketball and futsal court, just north of that entry sequence. So again, we've got a really great array of outdoor amenities, on the site here. Again, taking advantage of the terracing of the topography as we come down, from the multipurpose field. And I'll show you a couple of renderings that'll fill in some more information on the topography. Just moving to the south side of the building now, there's a space right there. Well, yep, just move a little to the left in the cursor, please, just to the left of the front door, right there. So that's a new space, again, that has been developed to allow for an early childhood playground on the site. Within the building, just inside the building is the location of the early childhood center, and I'll show that to you in the plans. So again, much like we're trying to do throughout the building, the learning space, has a really great opportunity to allow for students to move in and out of the building from the early childhood center directly into a safe and protected area for them to play. And likewise, as we move over to the front door of the building off of West Braddock, again, we have a generous entry plaza here, a gracious way to enter the building. The Scholars Green is right there. There's been some refinements of the design. You can see the new walking path, coming through from the car drop-off here, again, to ensure that it's convenient, safe, and pleasant to arrive by car or from the sidewalk, or through multiple modes of transport arriving onto the site. Moving to the parking on the east, most of this remains very similar to what you've seen before. One of the changes in the site plan, however, is that in that easternmost wing of the building, where it says East Classes, on the first level, we've relocated DCHS, the Teen Wellness Center, to that portion of the building, so that some of the co-located partners have their own discrete entrance on the eastern face of that wing, right where the sort of blue lines move around the building. Yep. And so again, all the co-located partners from the early childhood center, to those co-located partners, and then the high school, everybody has their own safe and secure and discrete entrances. However, there's a notable arrival and identity for each program, designated on the facades as well. There was, I know, some interest in the parking counts that are projected on the site. So just to cover that base, starting on the east side, in the larger capacity lot, we have 155 spaces shown in that parking lot. Then moving to the most extreme left side of the site, we have 20 parking spaces shown adjacent to the tennis and pickleball courts. And then you can see, sort of multiple stripes in that bus drop-off zone. So this zone would be used exclusively for buses, during arrival and departure. But however, after hours, for convenient access to the fields, and also, the indoor amenities like the pool and the gyms of the school building, There are 49 parking spaces that can be used after hours, within the lot that says car path, bus path. Difficult thing to say for some reason. So that's our site plan, and in many ways, and some of the changes and developments that we've been working on. Otherwise, like I said, we're in a mode of refinement here, and continuing to elaborate on the landscape palette and other features and amenities of articulating the site. Why don't we go to the next slide, please? So, building upon the survey that Ms. Gulick just shared and some of the results, we have, I think, a really interesting approach to the facades of the project, that we shared in a more complete presentation. But just to touch upon some of the references and some of the materials that you see here, we've explored the King Street campus, the historic civic architecture of the city of Alexandria, and we're starting to develop a palette that I think honors the history and traditions, but also is forward-looking and and exciting, and manifests the really powerful learning opportunities, and civic opportunities and community opportunities represented in new architecture and the new campus. So some of the materials that we're exploring include brick, of course, as certainly a vernacular material in many ways in the city of Alexandria, but we're using other gestures, particularly around major portions of the entry arrival to call out the front door, as you see here. So there's some metal panels associated with that brick, and there's large portions of glazing in certain areas, but we're being very careful with the fenestration or the windows, on the building. And why I mentioned that is, as many know, we're pursuing net zero energy on the site. And so the windows play a great role in energy conservation, from one vantage point. So we don't want to make them too big, and we don't want to, expose them to too much sun. So you can see there's a variety of shading devices now being articulated on the facade. So you see these structures, particularly, in virtually every one of these images. And these shading devices that you see now coming out on the facade are, one, to ensure that we've got a really high quality daylight inside the building, but two, there's actually photovoltaic or solar panels on those shading devices too. So we're getting sort of a dual purpose out of them. They're helping us to generate the power that is required to get to net zero energy, and it's about 10%, in what you see here on the facades of total power generation. We also have solar panels on the roof, and you'll see on canopies across the site and portions of the site. But just to finish the thoughts about the facades here too, again, in many ways, it's about creating an appropriate civic architecture and a gesture of the power of the learning institution, but then optimizing the learning environment inside. You also see the Scholars Green in the lower images, or the images on the right here too. So again, thinking about this sort of collegiate ambiance, that the building and the associated spaces are trying to represent. So a place, again, that the high school education can spill out into and activate during the course of the day for reflective and maybe even more active use of the site, from the CTE and project-based learning program that the building houses. Next, sorry, let me touch on one other question that's arrived, is also about the height of the buildings. So you can see that the massing is actually broken up, to actually make the building feel smaller in many ways than it is. The front portion of the building is actually the, that you see the entrance is actually one of the smaller scale pieces. And you can see that there's sort of a box framing that. So that's actually one of the lower height elements, and trying to feel like its own pavilion in many ways. But the tallest part of the building that you would perceive is actually just off to the right of that. And this is the portion of the building that's farthest away from the the associated neighbors, particularly the houses, that are on the western portion of the site. So looking from the front door, or measuring from the front door to the top of the 5-story wing that you see in the lower right image, that's about 75 feet, from the ground up to the roof level of that 5th floor. So the really interesting thing about this site, though, and we'll see this in a rendering as we come up, is that as the topography climbs off to the left, basically, of all of these images, the building actually is perceived as smaller, and we'll see that in a few renderings too. So, and that 75-foot height will feel lower, from the fields in particular, and from some of the neighbors on that side. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Next slide, please. So these are the plans that we continue to build upon, the dynamism and excitement, I think, around the idea of the pinwheel concept, and the pinwheel being all the wings, orbiting around what we consider the heart of the school. The heart of the school is sort of a nexus of all of these 3 wings coming together. And there was a question about, where is dining in the building, and the answer is, in many ways, the dining has become this really dynamic sort of collegiate space that is on every level of the building. So it's a distributed dining model with serveries on each level, and that's helping us to create this sort of great and exciting heart of the school when you walk into the building, and then from virtually every level you'll feel like you're part of a larger community of learners and scholars in the building. So it helps us integrate the building vertically and not make it feel like it's a series of isolated floors, as you move through. Otherwise, the changes that have occurred include the Early Childhood Center, which is on level 1, which is not articulated in the space by space here. We're working on that right now, but you can see that location in the lower wing, and then you can imagine the associated outdoor space that I was just sharing with you. The other piece that I mentioned on level 1, you can see the smaller arrow off to the right, and the sort of suites of spaces that comprise both some of the co-located partners and their discrete entrance into the building, and then some high school programs that have affinity to those programs, like the nurses clinic as well. Other changes within the plan, mostly refinements, except for the pool. I'll talk about that independently in a moment. But the other change, because when we moved the ECC into the building, we had to relocate some of the instructional spaces. So you can see on level 5, this is where one of the other changes have occurred, where we had sort of just one wing previously. We now have a sort of partial wing that has relocated some of those spaces, similar to what are on the lower levels, but you'll notice that it actually has a much narrower and smaller footprint than even level 4 below it. And this is, I think, helping us in some ways, to reduce the mass that it's set back from the front facade of the building, but it also helps with power generation and photovoltaics. We're not shading, the roof area that we need for additional solar panels, for example. So those are the major changes, and we'll circle back on the pool within the plan in a moment. But so why don't we keep moving? So I mentioned the site changes, in many ways, and the major change in the plan that you see here again is the movement of tennis and pickleball, really a swap between the practice field and those courts to make both of those spaces work better. So the plan is that, and just to touch on the building heights, here again. So we're at a higher elevation in that upper left rendering. Again, we've got a lot of topography that's coming down the hill here. So the mass of the building, you see the academic wing to the right, at the end of the sort of canopy that's in the rightmost portion of that. If you go to the upper rendering, yep, right there. So if you follow that line down, you see actually the academic wing there, and that's the 5-story academic wing at the end. However, from this side of the campus, it looks like 4 stories again, because there's a whole story down below this level. And the gym and the pool, which are to the left of that, you can see again are smaller mass to begin with than the 5-story wing that's closer to Braddock Road. So again, from the base of that building as you arrive, where you come in from the bus drop off, that mass is about 47 feet tall. So again, as we get closer to the neighborhood, the building gets smaller, and we're trying to be, of course, a good neighbor. So other aspects here, you see again, the canopies are particularly of note. They were here before, but they're part of our photovoltaic or solar panel system that are helping us target net zero energy. So there is a canopy here on the south side of the multi-purpose field that will be helping us generate power, but I think also interestingly, it also provides shade on the bleachers on that south side. And it also gives a sort of stature, to the field, I think, in sort of an athletic quality to the architecture and the presence of those canopies. So again, sustainability is doing a lot of things for us, in enhancing, I think, the quality of the environment overall. You also see several light stanchions here, and there was some interest in the height of those lights on the athletic field. So just as a basis of reference, there are lights on the existing field and on the existing tennis courts, and so we are also going to light this field. And what we're showing here is, just to make sure I've got this right, we've got 6 light stanchions that are 60 feet tall around the multi-purpose field. And let me just tell you why 6 and why 60 feet. And the answer is that a greater, having 6, rather than 4, perhaps, allows us to have a greater focal point, on the field, and the height also is a factor there as well. So the 60-foot elevation allows us to have a tighter focus, on the field, and both of those strategies, again, having the 6 and the 60 feet, minimizes the light spillage off of the field and the probability of glare and other issues. So again, it gives us much greater control over the focus of those light fixtures. So there will also be lighting on tennis and the basketball court as well. So with that, why don't we keep moving? Oh, let me just, one more thing, sorry, I forgot. The other thing of note is the placemaking here and the lower rendering. This is the counterpoint to that upper level front door from the bus arrival here. So you can see sort of an amphitheater emerging too. So as we start to articulate the landscape and placemaking and making great places outdoors for a variety of activities, athletics and outdoor learning, you can see the amphitheater that is also the arrival, from the building up to the field level. And there's also an accessible route, that you can't see in this image. So making sure everybody's got equitable access. Next. So to focus on the aquatic facility, this has been, building upon many of the decisions, again, made as we've moved through the process to consider, the great diversity of programs that are possible within this new facility. And just to read off a list of the kinds of programs that we're planning for, of course, there's high school and travel swim and dive competitions, there's public swimming, there's club swimming, there's swimming classes, swim aerobics, there's water polo, as I'll share with you in a moment, artistic swimming opportunities. So we're trying to create an aquatic facility that is really responsive to the diverse array of programs, but also to the diverse array of users, both of all ages in many ways, that this facility can readily accommodate successfully. So, so we've been actively engaged in conversation and developing the pool that I'll share with you in a moment. But one of the keys to that is that there's two separate bodies of water that will accommodate those programs, we think, most effectively. And they can do that for a couple of reasons, as you'll see in a moment. One is the varied depths of those facilities, so accommodating competitive swimmers and competitive divers, in one scenario, and very facile swimmers, and moving to young children and others that are just learning to swim, and making sure that they've got appropriate facilities too, and also allowing for therapeutic uses as well. So the keys to or some of the data and metrics about this is we're planning a 12-lane 25-yard lane, 25-yard lane competitive pool that also has an integrated diving portion that features 2 1-meter springboards, and I'll show you those in a moment. And that pool, with the 12 25-yard lanes, is also about 30 meters wide. So 25 yards in one dimension, 30 meters in the other dimension. And that allows us to also have a 25-meter floating cage water polo course. And we've heard a lot of interest about growing around the idea of water polo. So this pool will readily accommodate that. And the bottom line is that we're trying to create a safe, inviting, warm, and appropriately shallow or otherwise set of pools to accommodate the great diversity of the programs. Next. So this is the pool level within the building, and there's been a lot of refinements here, as the decision was made about the 2 pools, and so I'll walk you through them here briefly. So you see again the 2 pools, the one with the 12 stripes running up and down, or north and south through the building. Those are the 12 25-yard competition lanes. To the the left of the either the first or the 12th lane, depending upon when you start counting, you see in the upper left corner the 2 1-meter springboards here. So at the top portion of the pool, the depth is 12'3", to accommodate diving very actively. Down on the bottom of the pool, the depth will be 3'6". So again, this allows for casual swimming, but then also competition swimming in many ways, and competition diving. And the nice thing about the 12 lanes is that 2 teams could potentially be using groups of 6 lanes. So we can have very active use by competitive swimmers, or we can have a team or others lap swimming in the rightmost 6, while the diving boards are in use. So a very, very flexible pool here. And you can see other amenities like the entrances, and the pool will be, this pool will have accessible entries as well. But to touch upon the instructional pool that you see to the right, this is a shallower pool. It ranges from 3 feet at the bottom, down to 4 feet at its maximum depth. So again, thinking about younger children or those that might be using the pool for therapeutic uses, but might not be comfortable in the larger pool. This is a pool that's very specifically designed to accommodate learning and therapy. Oops, I'm getting a lot of echo if somebody can mute. Okay, I think I'm not muted. Hopefully you can hear me. So other aspects there, you can see the accessible ramp, on the left side. So again, people that are mobility impaired or otherwise, just cautious about entering the water, that pool is really designed for that. The other nice thing about two pools though, is we can keep them at different temperatures. So we can keep the instructional pool warmer for those that are not doing strenuous exercises versus the competition pool, which we can keep a little cooler and more appropriate to strenuous exercise as appropriate. So just to walk around the other ancillary facilities, we've been working hard on creating appropriate lockers and changing places. So you can see two sets of larger lockers, and we're working through all the details of that right now. But you can also see gender neutral or family lockers, to the right of those. So again, we're providing diversity of opportunity for changing appropriately, in the environment here. To the right of the lockers, you can see a stair that we've reintroduced here. And this is a stair that's dedicated to the use of the pool. So it's only 2 stories tall, and I'll show you how it works with the arrival sequence in a moment. But when you come in the front door on the level above us, you'll check in, and then you will perhaps, if you're going to the lockers, use this stair to come down, and you'll have great views over the pool deck as you do so, and arrive graciously into the locker facilities. Also to the right are 2 elevators that can service this deck as well. So again, for the mobility impaired, you've got an appropriate access to this facility. There's a classroom that complements the sort of large space on the deck, for instruction, for those learning to swim, and other amenities, and also to help run competitions there. There's a lifeguard office that has great views over the pool deck, so that even lifeguards off duty can help their colleagues in an emergency situation. They can see what's going on the pool deck, and then a variety of back of house pump infiltration space. Why don't we go upstairs and just take a look at how you would arrive into the facility? So this is an entry off of that west-facing courtyard, which we think is a really great and gracious way to come into the building from the sort of community side of the building. So we've moved the doors to this location where it says public entry lobby. So that is that west-facing courtyard just below that, and you'll arrive into a controlled point where you can check in as appropriate into the ticket booth, or be received by the RPCA administration. And from that point, though, you'll actually have views again across the pool, 1 level below. So there's glazing there, and then there's seating up here for spectators as well, for either competitions, or if you're simply just wanting to watch your children or others, on the deck, taking swimming lessons or whatever. Very convenient access to those seats. After you check in, if you're going to the pool deck, however, you can go to that stair that you see off the right, and straight down to the locker room facilities, or take advantage of the elevators that I pointed out down below. The other thing that this is doing for us, though, and recognizing that the gyms are a real amenity as well for after hours use. We can use this entry vestibule too for just controlled access to the gyms. And how it would work is you would come very similarly into that vestibule, but then you would use the stair to the left. And that stair actually goes up to the level above us, where the gym and the auxiliary gyms are. So again, we're designing the building for active community use, but also making sure that safety and security and access to other portions of the building can be controlled after hours as well. Next slide, please. So I'm going to turn it back to Ms. Gulick to take it from here.
Thanks, Sean. So one other thing that we're really excited to talk about tonight is we have brought on a new great portion of the team, which is our construction manager. We were able to hire Gilbane Building Company through a competitive RFP process. We had several submissions, and ultimately Gilbane was the #1 selected. They've built a lot of schools in the region, and most recently, and maybe most relevant to this project, George Mason High School in Falls Church. So we're very excited to have them on board. I do want to just explain a little bit, because we sometimes get questions about this, of the different kind of procurement methods and why we have the construction team on when we're still in design. ACPS likes to pursue for a lot of its new projects what's called a construction manager at risk method. The reason we do this is because the traditional design, bid, build method, where we would design the whole building with an architecture team and then bid it out for costs from the construction management firms, and then receive those bids, doesn't allow us to have the expertise of the people who actually build the building on what types of materials we should use, constructability, the schedule, different cost savings options. And so we like to bring our construction manager on early, so we can have that input, and then we negotiate the construction price once the design is further developed. So we're super excited that Gilbane is on board, and with us tonight is Lauren Doucette, who is a pre-construction executive with Gilbane and supporting us at this phase of the project.
Thank you, Ms. Gulick. Hi, I'm Lauren Doucette with Gilbane. And I just really want to start off by saying that how grateful we are and excited to be part of the high school project, as well as part of this community and the larger team. So a little bit about us. We are a family-run company. We were founded in 1870 in Rhode Island by the Gilbane family. We're 150 years old, and we have offices all throughout the country, but we have been in the DC area for 50 years. And the Gilbane family does still own the company. So we're in our 5th and 6th generations now at the helm, and we have 2 of them that sit here in our Northern Virginia office. So still very much a family company, which we really feel is part of the heritage and also the culture. So the fact that we are family owned, I think really trickles down into our core values as a company and also the types of organizations that we like to work with and align with. So we really pride ourselves in our K-12 experience. It does include recent projects that we've completed. You can kind of see them at the bottom of the screen for some of Alexandria's neighbors. So all 3 of these examples are net zero facilities, schools. So we just really want to take that experience and leverage it in partnering with Alexandria City Public Schools and the greater community on this project. So really thank you for trusting us with this important project, and we're just really looking forward to being part of the team.
Thanks, Lauren. And so we could go to the next slide. And one of the great things that I love the most about having the construction manager on board is that we get accurate estimates early on in the project. So we know where we are, and we know where we need to cut back, and we know where maybe we have some more flexibility. And so Gilbane has already been able to give us an estimate. So this is based on our schematic design estimate. We have 4 kind of different buckets or 4 different contributors, portions of the project included in the total high school project. So that first being the high school program, which is the priority for all of us, making sure that we're providing the capacity for the students as planned, and that we're providing really exceptional learning environments for our future high school students. That budget for ACPS is $150 million. Going down the line, the aquatic facility, which the city council voted to support adding $12.5 million to our budget to be able to allow for an $18.5 million aquatic facility. In June, that vote was taken by the council, and we're very grateful to them for supporting that. And so the aquatic facility is another thing we're tracking as a separate budget item. Alexandria Health Department will also be responsible for a teen wellness center, which is a part of the building, expanding the presence they already have at our high school, making sure we're providing those services to our students. And then the Department of Community and Human Services is including some offices for some family services that they provide to the city's residents, as well as the early childhood program, which I believe has 5 classrooms. So the city we're working with the city on establishing the budget that's required for this project. But then you can see in the rightmost column, we do have the latest estimate numbers. Even though they are larger than the budget, I want to point out that this is about a 3% increase from what our budget is in total. And it is a really good place to be at this stage of the project. So at the high school program, we're currently looking with all the contingencies and design assumptions and everything else built in, about $156 million budget. So we know we certainly have some work to do to take some money out of the project. But ultimately at this stage, we think that is very achievable for us to do and something we'll continue to track. I believe Gilbane has already recommended some cost saving measures, and we've identified, I think, up to $4 million already that we will be able to take out of the project. So we'll continue to work on that and continue to update this group. Additionally, the aquatic facility, you can see we have about a $600,000 increase in the estimate from the budget. So again, that's another, sorry, my dog just came right next to me and shook really loudly, apologies. That's another increase that we'll be looking to, where we'll be looking to save some funding. And I'm sure we'll be working with the Alexandria Health Department and DCHS to make sure we're prioritizing their spaces as well. So we were happy to be able to give you that budget update tonight, and we can go to the next slide. And then wanted to just let you know that with us coming back to school, and especially with this project being so far along in the design and really getting to that final point where we'll ask for city council approval in January on the design, specifically on the development special use permit. We will be having more updates with the community and with you all, potentially a monthly meeting, but we're working on that actual schedule with Perkins Eastman at what points are the most critical to make sure we have an advisory team meeting and a community meeting. So expect to hear from us more often than you did this summer. And we appreciate your continued participation in those meetings. In the winter, as I said, in January, we're anticipating for the design to go for Planning Commission and City Council approval. There will be public hearings associated with those, so we'd certainly ask for your support in publicizing that and making sure we get our community members on the board to speak. And then in early spring, we'll be preparing for construction, and that's really when this group's work is done. And we'll probably continue to ask that you all be our kind of key points of contact for your communities through construction, because it will be several years of that. And we like to be able to still have a keen sense of what our community is thinking and what their reactions are to some of the construction work that's going on the site. So we're moving pretty quickly along. We can go to the next slide. And this is just reiterating our project timeline. I know you all are very familiar, currently in the design phase on both the educational design as well as the construction piece, anticipating that the design will wrap up next spring, and then will be an implementation or construction on our side of the house. So with the target of opening the new facility in by September of 2024. And we'll continue to update you on that schedule as we have more details related to the construction. I think that is, so if this is our, you all know to email us and you have us. I would ask actually if we could stop sharing the presentation for a moment, and we could pull it back up as we have questions. But now we want to open it up to the advisory team members. If you have comments or specific questions for the group, things we didn't touch on that you were hoping we did, this is really your time to have that discussion with us. So please raise your hand and we'll go through and call on you. I see Terry Mosher, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, with Fairlington townhomes right there. What is the plan for fencing between the school grounds and the townhomes that are there all along the perimeter?
And you're talking about permanent fencing, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Medea, can you pull up the site plan? And then Sean, are you able to talk to some of the fencing that's anticipated on the site?
We are looking at that. I'm looking to see if Kyle's on the line here, as Kyle knows the answer better than I do there. But we know that the current fence is in a state of disrepair in certain locations, and so we're looking at both the landscape edge and fencing along that boundary of the site.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
we typically have fencing at the perimeter, but that's something we could talk about. And certainly if your community wants to have, access in, that's things we've done before too. So maybe we can note that as maybe something to talk about at a next meeting. We can go through the fencing and landscape plan and access and stuff like that. Be good.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Feel free to raise your hand, or if you can't figure out how to raise your hand, go ahead. Oh, Tom Fulton, I see you raising your personal hand. Go ahead. You're on mute, Tom.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Great. I wanted to follow up on Terry's point. I see that walking trail goes perilously close to the houses in his Fairlington Town neighborhood. And I'm wondering if, in addition to fencing, there is a thought about a berm and trees that would be year-round. The impact of this football field, this all-purpose field, since it currently sits behind Bradley Shopping Center, it really doesn't impact the residents who live on North Early and Fairlington Town. But flipping it means that the football field with its lights and its stadium noise will more directly impact those families. So I was wondering if, as you think about the noise and sight and sound mitigation, that you give some thought not only to enhanced fencing, but possibly a berm and a more substantial planting of evergreen trees. I also want to know if the stadium with the solar will also be on the north side of the field or just on the south side.
I can address some of that, Erica, if you'd like. So, Tom, we are, and you can see actually in the plan here, looking at a landscaped edge there. So there are trees and other landscape interventions. Recognizing that we want to be good neighbors. Certainly, with the adjacent properties. So, again, I think it would be great for us to bring in the landscape architect, who can speak in greater detail, and depth about, that landscape approach, particularly along that edge. So, I would suggest, that maybe we set that up as a follow-on conversation, but we completely understand the issues and the concerns and are moving to address that. With respect to the solar canopies, they're only on the south side of the field or the bottom side of the drawing. With respect to the multi-purpose field, there will be some over the parking, on the far east side of the site as well. So towards the shopping center. So again, being sensitive to the neighbors, and some of the sites and views, that, we want it to be in many ways of the landscape, interventions, from the adjacent properties, not necessarily of the solar canopy that would be on the south side.
And no stadium seating on the north side.
There's a lot of topography there, so really there might be some modest amount of seating, which could be for the opposing team, on that side, but the intention is that the spectators would be sitting underneath the solar canopies on the south side.
Thanks, Tom, for those questions, and thanks for the ones that you sent in before. I know we just replied to those right before the meeting, but
I know
think they were-
I didn't have a chance to read through them completely, and I'm hoping that the parking that might also be a future of how to deal with parking mitigation. But I appreciate very much your quick answer. It was substantive and very responsive.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, and specifically, I don't know if we touched on the parking count, so I'll just bring that up now for the good of this group here. Tom had asked a question about parking, and especially during, like back to school night or specific events, and considering we'll have a pool and new field and gymnasium here, and that we might have a lot of use of that, just how much parking is there, and will there be in the future. So currently, I believe we have about 145 spaces at Mini Howard. The parking in this plan, currently we're showing 155 on that east side lot where that all the way towards the shopping center will, yes, thank you. I'm like using my mouse, but no one can see it, sorry. And then in the bus loop along West Braddock Road, we have 20 spaces which are dedicated near the tennis and pickleball field. And then the whole, with that like smaller lot, and then that whole bus path, when it's not being used for pickup, for drop off in the morning and pick up in the afternoon, can be used for, will be striped for standard car parking, which will add, I believe, another almost 50 spaces. So it is a significant increase in parking. It seems no matter how much parking you build, you never have enough. But we are trying to make sure that we consider that, and especially during those kind of special event times or pick up and drop off when we know there'll be a peak or a rush. So certainly something we're considering, but thanks for sending that in before, Tom. Okay. Does anybody else have their hand raised? Want to even comments? If you don't have a question, you just have a comment. Anything on the aquatic facility? That was a significant conversation last night, and we did want to get some feedback on that. I think last night when we asked about how they felt it would the aquatic facility would serve the needs of the community, there was a fairly positive response. Which was good. I think to let you know that we went through, I think, 7 different configurations of the pool and kind of sub options of those. And this is really the one that for our athletics, our physical education department, as well as recreation, parks, and cultural activities, made the most sense without being beyond our budget. So we're pretty happy with this, moving forward with this aquatic facility configuration.
Hey, Erica, on that point, do you mind going back to the pool slide?
Sure, absolutely. Nadia, can you pull up the pool slide?
So sorry to rehash, but just again, what kind of depth are we looking at? And from what you're mentioning, it's good for competitive diving, it's good for competitive swim. If we're doing teaching kids how to learn how to swim, it does facilitate all those needs.
Yes, it does. Sean, do you want to go through depths and just kind of the uses?
Sure. So, within the larger body of water, again, from the bottom of the drawing at the sort of entry point of the lanes, that's about 3'6", or it is 3'6". And then as you move to the top of the competitive pool, it'll be 12'3" deep, so allowing for the diving portion there as well. But the other piece, as I mentioned, so this pool is designed to accommodate a lot of varied activities. So of course, competitive swimming or lap lane swimming and club swimming, diving as the other piece. But the other thing that it does in its left to right dimension allows for that 25 meter water polo course as well. And it's an appropriate depth to allow for competitive water polo play there as well. So lots of sort of diverse activities that can be accommodated within the larger pool of the two. But again, the instructional pool, it's a bit shallower. Again, we've heard a lot about, students coming from elementary schools all across the city, to these facilities to learn to swim. So this one's shallower and a bit warmer. So at the base of the stairs at the bottom of that pool, 3 foot deep, and then, gradually going down to 4 feet in depth there. And so learning to swim, but also a variety of therapeutic swimming opportunities within that pool as well.
And would you be able to potentially have some folks training for both swim competition and diving at the same time, or would they have to be at different times?
Yes, yeah, it's one of the nice things about the 12-lane pool that we can use the rightmost 6 lanes, for lap swimming, while the diving boards are being used as well. So, there's safe distance between them, and so we can actually have sort of dual use at the same time.
Gotcha. And I noticed the service entry in the top right of the schematic, and I thought that was a great touch because you will need to bring trucks in to, deposit certain items and everything. So if there is access to get all the way around to that service entry then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're very attentive to convenience service, but also even to emergency access. Should there be an emergency on the deck, there's convenient access for first responders, to get into the facility as well.
And then where's the entrance for the public?
It's 1 level above.
Okay.
Again, because of the topography of the site, so it's directly above the locker rooms, and that you see in this drawing.
Medea, can you go to the next slide?
Yeah. So
Is there, how's the ADA compliance work? Where's the
you see there's off to the right of where it says pool upper lobby. So if you can just trace to the right here, you see the stair there, but then there's 2 elevators, at the end of that circulation there. So both of those elevators can take somebody to the pool deck 1 level below. They also hit every level of the building, but we can control access, through the automation system there as well. So the building is fully accessible. So.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Aguirre, for going through those questions. Other questions, comments?
Erica?
Yes.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. I shared with Councilmember Aguirre an article I read in the Washington Post where Prince George's County had done an exactly similar project of putting a pool in a school that it hoped to also make available for public recreational use. And the question they were facing was that operational cost and how to share it between the school. These are quite expensive operationally. And frankly, it worries me about the humidity seeping into the wooden floor of the basketball court above it. But assuming that the architects have a way of mitigating the humidity to a point where it doesn't impact the basketball court, there's still about a $500,000 annual operating cost. At least that was what I believe was discussed in the Post article. So is there an effort by the school and Parks and Rec to work an MOU to share that cost so the burden doesn't fall on the school board?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And we did receive some similar questions yesterday related to operating costs.
Okay.
ACPS and RPCA will absolutely be entering into an MOU regarding this space. So we understand the division of responsibility, the division of use, all of those things is certainly something we will take into consideration. This facility will also be net zero in addition to the entire school. Is what our intent is for it to be, and so that also adds an added level of complexity into the operating of the facility. But you are correct. Certainly, operating costs would be at least $500,000. I would say, I believe likely more And so RPCA is aware of that. We're aware of that, and we're know that it'll have to be something that will be within one of our budgets in this school year that it opens. So more to come on that once we figure out how we're splitting this up. Okay. Well, it's 6:33. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. As always, if you have any additional questions or follow-up or comments, please email that high school project email. It comes to all of us, and we're happy to respond or just receive your comments and share them with the team. So thank you all. Have a good night and stay out of the thunderstorms.